we haven't really talked a lot about in this class yet, but the issue of history of the book is an interesting thing. If you think about it, I told you guys a little bit about the history of the book. One reason why we have a lot of ancient Greek stuff that's been passed down to us is because both Islamic and the Catholic churches did a lot of preservation of these documents throughout the ages. I've actually got it up. I actually got a illustration up in the Canterbury Tales as my Zoom background for today. But these medieval manuscripts were all written by hand. Like there wasn't a printing press yet, so you couldn't make copies and publish the book widespread. So all books that were written had to be handwritten and copied. So, but they're really fascinating and beautiful books. This is, I want to share my screen. This is a picture of Canterbury Tales. This comes from the British Library site. Let's see if I can zoom in as far as it'll zoom. But they would write these manuscripts in this fancy handwriting. They would do stuff like they would draw pictures off on the sides. Like there's some like really beautiful ones in here. Like all the pages were richly illustrated with these fine colors. And what they would do when they would write these books, like you don't want to write every letter word for word, otherwise your hand's going to cramp after a while when you're copying them. So like what a lot of these medieval manuscripts would do, you would see, this is the art of calligraphy. If they would put like little symbols above the words to show like they've left out a letter, for instance, so rather than writing a letter, they would draw like a little squiggly line to indicate like an A or an E or something like that was there. Yeah, like I'm looking at, yeah, see one, it says one that opera with his shore of Suta, his route the march hath pierced to the rota. So the way that I read it to you last week, this is the general prologue. The way I read it to you last week, this is like what one of the original manuscripts that have survived since the 1400s looks like. And like I said, the way that they would get, like for instance, I'm looking at this one, then Longman folk to go on pilgrimages. That's spelled G-O-N-E, but as you see, like right here, they put a little squiggly line above the N to indicate there's an E there. So they would do stuff like that in order to shorten the amount of time it took to actually copy it down. So whenever you're dealing with medieval literature, the challenge is you have to kind of know the calligraphy language. So you kind of have to know the shorthand that these writers do. So not only do you have to struggle with reading the handwriting, like the fancy font, it looks like a fancy font, right? But not only do you have to worry about that, but you also have to know the shorthand, which can be challenging. This is in Middle English. Lots of work from medieval scholars. You have to like if you were going to look at Dante's Inferno, for instance, right? That manuscript would kind of look like this, but you would have to look at it in Italian because that was Dante's language. Or lots of stuff in the Middle Ages was written in Latin because Latin was the universal language at the time. but because of the church. The church preserved the Latin language, and so some, like if you read a medieval manuscript in Latin, you would you have to also know the shorthand. So not only you're dealing with a foreign language, but you also have to deal with shorthand. So, but yeah, these, I'd encourage you guys to look through some of these. This is on, again, this is on British Library's website. There's tons of these you can look at. Lots of books, like lots of books have interesting histories in and of themselves. Beowulf, we almost, I don't know if you guys have read Beowulf in high school. I didn't assign it in this class because that's usually something you read in Brit Lit. But Beowulf, there was actually only one copy of it in the entire world, and in the 1800s. And the library that it was housed in actually burnt down. So luckily, the one manuscript we had of Beowulf made it. Like there's parts of it that the fire got, but for the most part, it was preserved. So it's interesting to think we might not even read Beowulf today if that one manuscript wouldn't have made it through that fire. There was one of the great tragedies of the ancient world, even was when the Library of Alexandria burnt down. Like all these lost books from Aristotle and Plato and probably other plays from the Greek playwrights and stuff, they were all housed in that library in Alexandria, Egypt. When that library burnt down, all this old knowledge went with it. So it's kind of a sad thing to think about. But yeah, I just wanted to draw your attention to this. Like they didn't have paper as we know it. They would write on papyrus. But yeah, these manuscripts are all super beautiful. And yeah, I had to do a lot of, when I was in grad school, I had to do a lot of transcription of some of these. Like there's lots of stuff that looks like this that hasn't ever been transcribed. So it's kind of fun to go through them and try to make sense of them. Yeah, that's how we get something like the Canterbury Tales preserved to us today. So
if there's different manuscripts, is the artwork different?
Yeah.
It is. It's all pretty like that.
Yeah, it depends on who was copying it down. So
Okay.
like sometimes like if you look through a medieval manuscript, you'll see different artwork, or you guys know, like sometimes like you squiggle in in, let's say you have a textbook, right? You'll draw little pictures. So like oftentimes you'll see like random little pictures and stuff people drew on the side margins of the manuscripts. So yeah, each manuscript's different because each person who copied it was different. So sometimes you even see the personality of the copier in the manuscript. When you guys read The Wife of Bath's Tale, we didn't really get to discuss that one since that was a Friday reading. When you did The Wife of Bath's Tale, it talked about a gloss. Like the wife read all these, the wife's husband made her read all these medieval books about how awful and wicked women were. And he would talk about the gloss in the side of the manuscript, in the side of the book. Oftentimes, like in a medieval manuscript, you would have the manuscript, but over on the margins, you would have somebody's like commentary on it. So, like when you read The Wife of Bath's Tale, that's what that was talking about. She was talking about how she rejected a lot of those glosses that men made on all these famous passages about women. So the history of the book. when the printing press was invented by Gutenberg in the 16th century, it changed everything. It changed everything. And I told you guys before when we did the Christianity lecture that the Bible actually wasn't in the hands of the common people until the 16th century. Before that, people had to rely on the church to tell them the Bible because it wasn't widely accessible. Then, of course, there's also issues with translation, like, and all that. Without the Protestant Reformation, like the Protestant Reformation did a lot to get the Bible into the hands of the common folk, but the Protestant Reformation arguably wouldn't have been as successful if it wasn't for the fact that the printing press was able to disseminate all this information quickly. So what's the interesting history here? But I wanted to talk real quick about the Pardoner's Tale. I haven't read any discussion posts on it yet because I just posted the questions a day or two ago. But yeah, there's lots of good stuff to talk about with this tale. This is actually my favorite one of the lot. But I told you guys, but this is an important one for our Christianity lecture, because I told you guys before the Catholic Church got into a lot of trouble in the Middle Ages for corruption, and the pardoner is almost an embodiment of the type of corruption that the church got itself into in the Middle Ages. The St. Peter's Basilica in Rome was actually built with money that came from these indulgences, that came from these pardons. So if a person, what they would do, if a person sinned, the pardoner would say, okay, here's your penance. Like if a Catholic goes to confession, you have to confess your sins. But then in order to absolve your sins, the priest gives the person a penance. So normally it's like, okay, go read a psalm or go say some Hail Marys or something. But what they would do in the Middle Ages, in order to absolve you of your sins, they would sell junk to you and say that it belonged to a famous saint or it belonged to Jesus himself or something like that. And they would say, if you buy this, like this will suspend the time you have to spend in purgatory or something. So that's what this pardoner is. He's pretty much this medieval con man who is selling junk, and he's trying to guilt the people into buying this junk. And he's saying greed is the root of all evil. Then he tells this like really weird little story about death. Like, so it's definitely a interesting piece. So Chaucer describes the pardoner in a way that like makes him look like a homosexual for the time period. Like he talks about his yellow hair and how he looks like a gelding. So a lot of that language was kind of symbolic, showing that maybe there's not only that sort of corruption with the church, but maybe there's also some sort of like sexual corruption or something with them too. So and you're meant, when you read the Canterbury Tales and you read the part about the pardon, you're meant to kind of get the creeps from them. I mean, you're meant to kind of feel skeezed out. This is such a valuable piece to read because it shows you why the product this happened. This was written about 100 years before the Protestant Reformation. So this is a good way of showing you why the Protestant Reformation happened.
You could see him with like one of those big long trench coats on, and he opens it up and he's got the inside line with everything.
Right.
Greasy hair.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any gamers in here who ever played Resident Evil 4, right? But he's kind of like the merchant in Resident Evil 4, right? He pulls his coat, and there's all this junk. Like this crucifix belonged to one of the saints or something, right? People would believe it. So one thing that I like to say about the Partner's Tale is this is a tale about religious corruption. But just think to ourselves, of course, the Catholic Church was definitely guilty of this in the Middle Ages. Just think to yourselves, guys, how this story hasn't really aged at all. If you see a lot of religious corruptions everywhere right now. A lot of these televangelists that you see on TV, for instance, I could go on a whole spiel about them. People like Joel Osteen or Kenneth Copeland, a lot of these like televangelists are millionaires, even billionaires. So how are you a minister of God and are a billionaire because of it? So I'm not going to I'm not going to harp on it any more than that. But you guys probably see it for yourselves. A lot of these televangelists, other church organizations, maybe even the Catholic Church still. There's a lot of this corruption that you see. I don't know. I don't know that when you guys read The Partner's Tale, were any of you guys reminded of that, or maybe have you guys noticed this type of thing, are as critical about it as I am?
Yeah. Yeah, because it automatically makes you wonder why they're not doing something better with the money, why they're being greedy, and it kind of can deter you from wherever or whomever.
Yeah, like Kenneth Copeland, for instance. I could show you guys an interview that he did, but he bought his own jet to travel around with church money. When he was asked about it, he was pretty much like, God wanted me to have this jet, right? So who's that remind you of? The Partner, right? So yeah, people like that kind of give me the willies. Right? I'm just like, I wouldn't want to be you after this life. But religious charlatans, right? You still see them. I don't know. Does anybody else have a comment on this? Hopefully, none of you are Kenneth Copeland fans, and I've offended you. My apologies if I have. But have you guys noticed this yourselves? Maybe in your own churches and stuff. Have you guys noticed any suspicious behavior like this?
I actually kind of do, like, but I can't exactly go into too much detail about it.
Well, you don't have to give names, Bella.
Because at my church they kind of show favoritism. It isn't exactly like a whole it isn't exactly a whole I'm going to spend church money on like whatever I want, but it's sort of a whole this person's better than you because of they go to church more or they praise God harder than you do. And sometimes it feels like I'm at the bottom of the ladder because I get less favoritism than someone else I know.
Right. So just like how in The Partner's Tale, right, the more junk you buy, right, the better you are in the
Yeah,
eyes of the community.
because pretty much the way, like, sometimes it feels like I'm just like the worst person ever, and like I get complained at if I miss like one day of church, but they can go like miss like a whole week and they'll be fine. Like, how is that fair?
right? Whoever gives the church the biggest offering every week, right? They get some slack.
Honestly, though, at this rate, I don't even know.
You might just need a different church, Bella. You might just want to look around for a different one. There's no shortage.
Honestly, I think I do.
Yeah, I've seen some of this kind of stuff happening even still in a Catholic church. Like a couple weeks ago in our church, we had a missionary come by from Africa, but like you could just tell like he was on a sales trip, right? You could just tell he wanted you to put money in that offering box, right? He kind of gave you that car salesman type feel.
I listen to Caleb. It's Christian radio. I listen to it all the time, and they were doing like I guess like a fundraiser to keep their radio on the air, and it was okay. That was fine. They were like going to give away so many $100 worth of groceries. Your name was going to get entered for this contest, and it was supposed to be all that morning. Well, it was like from 6 to 8. It went on like there was hardly no music, but they never do that, so it was okay. But then later on that day, they were still doing it. They were still saying the same thing. And then I still at first it was like, well, they're still doing that. They said the morning, and it's still going on. Because not only that, they kept saying like, all we need is $100 more, and da 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 da. And I heard it like 15 times, and finally I was like, and they did it for days. They did it for like almost a week, I think they did. And they were telling you this person was so generous, they donated $1,000, and this one did. So who knows how much money they really. I mean, it doesn't cost that much to keep a radio station on the air. And they might give you concert tickets out every once in a while, but they just kept on and kept on and kept on. And I don't know how often that they do that, but a lot of times you hear pastors that do podcasts do the same thing.
Yeah, there's this whole big thing in especially these televangelist circles right now called the prosperity gospel. Have you guys ever heard that term, the prosperity gospel? Um, the prosperity gospel is this idea that the more money you give the church, the more that God is going to bless you and give you wealth. And like they'll say stuff like, if you give $100 to the church this week, God's going to bless you tenfold. He'll give you $1,000 back. So
Like those Facebook chain messages.
and that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. But there's a lot of these like mega churches and stuff that you see today, especially like a lot of the ones down in Texas, like Joel Osteen's church, for instance. But that's what they'll say. They'll say, give us. You'll even like watch their sermons on TV, and they'll be like, give us $100, and God will give you 10 times that back. Like people buy into it. People do it.
People believe it.
There's lots of stories about people who are dirt poor, like people who live on like $1,000 a month, and they'll give like $200 in their check every month from like one of these churches, thinking that they're going to get money back. So
And they have no remorse. That's how the partner was.
yeah, how little things have changed.
And that's how he made them feel. He made them feel like they needed to do it, like they were doing the right thing. Oh, give it to me. You don't need it. Well, God'll bless you for it. You'll stay out of purgatory.
Right. Yeah. The story kind of functions as a sermon. Greed is the funny part about the sermon is greed is the root of all evil. But says says a greedy guy, right, who is out trying to rip you off. So like that's part of the genius of the story. He's trying to give you a sermon about how greed's the root of all evil when he's so greedy himself. That kind of raises the question, like, is the fact that the pardoner himself is so corrupt, does that water down his own message? Or does that even make his own message even more effective? Yeah, but that's a tough one. My answer to that question myself would be, I think that arguably makes it more effective. Like you see a lot of this prosperity gospel stuff happening today. They're unashamed about it. They're undoubtedly very effective because these are billion-dollar churches. So take that for what you will. It's a really cool story that he tells, though. It's like these guys looking for this treasure, like they just all kind of stab each other in the back, as they're looking for the treasure, and then death. They don't understand that death isn't that. They think death is. They don't understand it's a metaphor, right? They think death's a real guy. So, death finds them, right? He tricks them into pretty much killing each other over this money. Yeah, and then
you can kind of think of it like that's what's going to happen to the partner.
Yeah,
and he does.
Yeah, at the end they even have an epilogue where the knight gets mad and kind of lays into the partner here, right? Like, listen to your own story. I don't know, maybe most of you guys are being quiet. I don't know if some of you guys just haven't read this one yet. You see, I want to put it in gallery view. Who else here? I'll pick on some of you. We have a pretty small group today to be covering sonnets.
And I really like poetry. I know you said you weren't, or it wasn't your favorite. Poetry's not your favorite. I do want to know, are you going to go over the sound of the poem?
Yes.
Okay. Because I understand how to write it and what it needs to, but I don't know the beat.
We're getting ready to cover all that.
Okay.
Let's jump into them. We'll leave the partner where he is.
Well, I didn't mean to rush you. I like the partner, so I didn't mean to.
No. Yeah,
I just wondered.
Yeah, I need a lot of time to cover them, so it's probably best we go ahead and jump in. I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about Chaucer, just because he is one of the great English writers. If you guys take English 200 Brit Lit to 1800, you'll probably read a lot more of them. I don't know though. I gave you guys the two biggest ones: the Wife of Bath and the Partner. Sometimes his great contribution is he represented so many people during the Middle Ages. Like one of the funny tales that you guys didn't read in here's the Miller. The Miller's just like this working class guy. He just tells this like really funny story that has like a bunch of fart jokes and stuff in it. So like you have that in the Middle Ages. You had the Knight's Tale. The Knight's Tale looks something. It's really pretentious. It looks like one of the great Greek epics or something. So the way that he does it is he shows you all these different people, and each character tells a different type of story. So like you get all these. It's a really interesting book if you read it in its entirety.
Do you remember that movie, A Knight's Tale?
Yeah, with Heath Ledger.
No, no. It had
I think that was Heath Ledger, Kaylee. Yeah, that
it was
was
the
right.
black guy.
Yeah, that was right before Heath Ledger died, I think. 2001 movie.
Maybe it was.
Yeah, Heath Ledger.
It was funny though. Yeah.